Starting. Okay. We're live. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Security Podcast on the In30 Network. This is episode 161, and we're going to title this Natural Disaster Recovery. Not really natural disasters, but any sort of major disaster that you may face. We want to talk about what to do. And this is not just have 3 backups and everything else. This is talking about like you need to leave you come back to your house or you have to leave your house for a very long time, what you should do. So I was telling Tom before the show. Let's first say hi to Tom.
Howdy, everyone.
So I was telling Tom before the show, I have friends and family in every location in North America that has been hit recently. I have a friend in Mexico City who went through 2 earthquakes. I have a sister-in-law in the Houston area. I have an older sister in Tampa, and I have a good friend of mine in Puerto Rico with her family and all her friends that are all dealing with this. Everybody is okay, but again, it's worth bringing up. So, Tom, have you done like major disaster dealing with?
I actually have not personally, and I probably should. I don't live in an area that gets terrible weather now, but it's always good to have kind of a bug out bag or a go bag ready. Luckily, I married someone who does. So she's got 2 bags, one of general medical supplies, the other with stuff like thermal blankets and basically like crazy level camping out in the woods for a week sort of stuff. And I've got a bag of computer equipment. So that shows you our priorities.
Well, I mean, the good thing other than the earthquake is that we knew these storms were coming way, way, way in advance.
Indeed.
So I mean, we knew how to prepare. But again, it's people who are riding the storm out because you know what? Weather, at least on the East Coast, has been completely wrong just about every single time. Whether we were supposed to have snowpocalypse, where we were going to get 30 inches of snow, and the bread and water runs were going, or just all these things are wrong. So you're like, oh, you know what? I'm going to ride it out. And unfortunately, that's the wrong answer. Then you have people who say, you know what? I got literally nowhere to go. Yeah, it's great that you evacuate. Where am I going to evacuate to? I mean, where are you going to go? Yeah, you have friends and family, but you can't call them up and say, hey, I have a family of 4. Can we just stay with you for an indefinite amount of time? And then when do you go back? So there is a reason to ride it out and just be ready to go. So
yeah, it's not an easy problem, especially if and a lot of people are this way. A lot of families are this way, where the majority of your family is in one little pocket of the country, and if a big natural disaster, such as a hurricane or a huge earthquake, hits, your entire family and your extended family could be impacted. Right? Everyone that has a place where you could go could be in the exact same situation you're at, and it's one thing to move 4 people for a couple days. It's entirely something different to move 20 people for an extended period of time, or even 4 people for a month. Right? It's not an easy thing.
And again, I don't want to get political on this, but it's good having money. I mean, where you were and healthcare and all the stuff that you need that you can support this. But it's like, okay, if you didn't have money and you come back and now the business that you're working at is gone, and now you have nowhere to work for 6 months, and you have mouths to feed and nobody else is doing. I mean, these are all things. So we're hearing, because I'm hearing through my friends, Puerto Rico may not have power for 6 months. And people reminded them of it's an island. You can't just bring bucket trucks to Puerto Rico. You have to get them on a ship, or you can only use what they have there. So for the next 6 months, nothing is working unless you have a generator, which is terrible. So
yeah, this is a huge problem, and it's a giant logistical nightmare. I can't even imagine. And my sympathies go out to everyone there. There's no easy answer to fix that.
So I mean, I'm on the East Coast. I lived through Sandy. Now the good thing is we didn't really get hit, but I knew people obviously not too far away from me, even in town, that had no power for 2 weeks. I didn't have power for 72 hours, which is the point of the show. What do you do for the next 72 hours? But they didn't have power for almost 2 weeks, and it was getting cold. And I think we had snow at the end of it, because I remember having a snow day on top of everything. So we want to talk about, so let me give you another example. So when we talk about 72 hours, imagine your wife is pregnant and you have to go to the hospital for 72 hours, which is usually, I mean, it's between the 48 and 72 hours where you just have to get up and go. What do you do? Which is not a, I mean, it's not a natural disaster, but do you have all the items ready? So we're just going to talk about what you should have, what you shouldn't have, what you don't need, what you should worry about, and how to get those things at the last minute if you need to.
Yeah. So one thing, and this sounds really stupid and like a real first world kind of answer. But I make sure that I've got a battery pack to charge my phone. I make sure it's always topped up. I make sure, every so often, about, once every couple of weeks, I'll plug something into it and check the charge level, make sure it's topped off. It's somewhere near full, just to have it. And that's, it serves multiple purposes, right? As I drop my canteen of coffee. But it serves multiple purposes. The first of which, obviously, being communication, right? And if you're lucky enough in the area of the world where a natural disaster strikes to still have cell towers and cell signal available and usable, you can use your phone and your battery pack to stay in contact with everyone you care about. Let people know, hey, I'm okay. Everyone's fine. The place is trashed, but everyone's good here. Everyone's alive and hopefully healthy, right? But there's another thing, right? If you're on the go, or especially if you're huddled in a shelter somewhere trying to ride out a storm, it's gonna get boring. It's gonna get really boring. And kind of having some form of entertainment or something, to better your mental health, even a little bit, can go a whole long way to making the situation a little bit more bearable. And I realize that's a really terrible first world problem kind of answer. But I think it is a little important to keep in mind. You've got to keep yourself a little distracted.
Look, I have 2 young kids, and I will tell you the best purchase we ever made was get my son a tablet. And I don't want to hear everyone complaining that we should play with him and everything else. This tablet got him potty trained. This tablet got him to go to sleep by himself. This tablet got him through the restaurants, through airplanes. I mean, I don't want to hear it. Yes, we don't put him on for 20 hours a day. We do monitor it, but yes, a tablet goes a long way when you're bored, and especially with young kids, where you can actually get some thinking done while you hand them something and say, YouTube, go.
Yeah, and that's one thing to keep in mind, right? You might not have a lot of time to sit there and go to Netflix and say, oh yeah, download this entire season of this show that I'm watching, right? There might not be a network connection where you're at, so having some form of offline content or apps, or I know YouTube lets you pull stuff down offline now. I think that's just for YouTube Red. But anyway, having some form of offline, not connected entertainment content can be really beneficial.
Look, you can get a 64 gig mini or micro SD card and load a whole bunch of movies on there that you legally acquire. Let's just say that. I do that with like I said, with my son, because we're in the car or we're wherever. And by the way, YouTube, I think you're right, through Red has a download in the background option for that. So battery packs, a good thing. Here's the problem with all these bug out bag type ideas. You're spending money hoping to never use it. And I want to make that point clear. You're buying all the stuff and you're hoping never to use it. And you say, well, I have a battery pack. But the answer is, the idea is you don't have time to go and get it. Like, you have to go right now.
The bug out bag is literally run into the closet, grab the bag, run out, right? You barely have time to put on your shoes, is the idea of the bug out bag. Not well, I don't know. I think I left the tablet over here and maybe this thing is charged. No, oh, hang on. Let me download Game of Thrones real quick. That's not really the way you should be thinking about a bug out bag. A bug out bag is literally grab and go.
And unfortunately, like you said, so you're paying $10 or $15 for a battery pack that you will never use. I mean, maybe you have 2 of them and you switch them out every once in a while so you don't feel like that. But again, it's you're never going to use it. And then with that said, you may not have a tablet, so you're going with your phone. Make sure you have the right cables. Make sure everything works. We talk about batteries and battery packs. Make sure the batteries that you have in there work. Whatever you need, a pair of headphones, things like that.
Having a good offsite backup, and I know we've talked about offsite backup, like, hey, you could store a hard drive at your parents' house or your neighbor's place, something if your house burns down. But what if your city burns down, right? We've had a lot of wildfires in the Pacific Northwest recently. What if your neighborhood catches on fire, right? What if a whole swath of the state of Texas is underwater, right? Your offsite backup at your neighbor's house isn't really going to help you. Having a cloud option of some kind can really mitigate that sort of disaster scenario. It can save the data that wouldn't be saved otherwise.
It's somebody said, and again, I don't know who to attribute this to, is if you're going to do that hard drive swap, do it for somebody 50 miles out of your range. But I get it. My parents live on the same coast. They're basically 40 miles there. 50 miles would be New York City. But guess what? New York City is probably going to fare much worse. And again, where are you going to keep this? You want to keep your hard drive in a cool, dry place. It's a basement that can get flooded. So yes, having some online cloud backup that automatically works is a good answer. With that said, we gave you the free ways to do that with either Google Photos that uploads not original, but high quality. Google Music, if you do that, if you stream a lot. Here's the thing. At this point, you may not have all these things in your physical possession. Everything may be in some online locker or some streaming service, which at that point you don't need to worry about. You just have to worry about your files. And we talked about Google Drive or Dropbox or wherever.
And your password manager, wherever you keep your authentication, your two-factor authentication. I know people who actually print out the two-factor authentication codes and have them in a folder that they store in a safe in their house, right? Make sure you've got a copy of your two-factor authentication or some way to get back in with your backup codes or another authentication mechanism, just in case you lose your phone or a disaster strikes and you can't get to your phone.
So I was reading about this because my phone is going through some troubles now. With the Nexus 5X and the 6P, they've had this boot looping problem. The problem is if you have two-factor on all these things, if you don't print out your codes, which you're supposed to, if your phone goes into a boot loop, guess what? You can't get those codes back. You have to reformat. And that's a really big problem. So again, you have a disaster, you lost your phone, now you need those two-factor codes. So you need to put them somewhere as well.
So aside from technology, we've got a list thanks to ready.gov on a essentially disaster supplies kit. And the basic list, of course, is water, food, a hand crank radio. Actually, I love these hand crank radios. They're not too expensive. You can find them online or really at any sporting goods store. But it's cool. They've got a crank and you can get a weather radio because you might not have internet. You might not have access to anything except radio waves that are being broadcast all the time. And having access to a manual, hand crank powered weather radio could mean the difference between we had no idea the storm was coming and we had some idea the storm was coming. If you're at the point where you're using a hand crank radio, you're probably at that point, but it's always good to have the information.
I mean, yeah. And unfortunately, I don't own a hand crank radio. And that happened during Sandy. People are like, well, just listen to the radio. And I go, what's a radio? I mean, my car has a radio. And I mean, to this day, I still don't own one. But again, having one is probably a good thing because as the ham radio people say, when disaster strikes, we're your only savior.
Yeah, there's I've seen flashlights that you literally just shake them and there's a mechanism inside to power them temporarily. Those are great, so you don't have to have batteries. You probably should have some batteries for whatever devices you have in addition to battery packs. First aid kit, of course, that's basically a necessity in your bug out bag. Here's something I didn't think about, a whistle to signal for help. I totally didn't think of anything like that, but that's absolutely a valid answer. And again, if you wanted to check out this list for yourself, it's on ready.gov/build-a-kit. So go check that out. They've got everything from the basic list to additional to maintenance, storage locations. One thing that they do point out is that your bug out bag might not be available. Right? I used to work actually I still work about an hour away. What if disaster strikes while you're at the office and your bug out bag's at home? What do you do then? What if you can't get back home?
Look, then you need another one, obviously, for your car, and that like we said in the beginning, this tends to be expensive because you need one in your car, you need one here, one there, and these are supplies that you hope to never use.
Right. There's I know a lot of different offices say, hey, just in case you're stranded at work, keep a supply of food, keep comfortable shoes that you could wear in a disaster scenario. Think broken glass and stuff like that. So if you're in a disaster, you probably don't want to be wearing open-toed sandals. It's probably not a great thing to wear. So some good disaster ready sneakers are always a good thing to have. It's all about managing risk, and some people don't have a bag and they're okay with that risk, and that's okay too. I wouldn't recommend it, especially if you're in a disaster prone area or a hurricane prone area, but it's always good to be prepared.
And like we started with the show, I should have something. And I mean, I know where to grab everything really quick, but once panic sets in and you have to go and everything else, you kind of start forgetting everything. So to know this is the one spot I have to go is the right answer. And again, everything you put in here has to be checked. So you have to add that to your to-do list every 6 months, every year. Check everything. Like, again, you put winter clothes in there and now it's the summer. You don't want to be walking around with gloves and a winter jacket. So it's
there's some stuff here in the additional supplies, like infant formula, bottles, diapers, wipes, diaper rash cream. Go down the list of baby supplies. What are you going to need if you have a small child to basically keep up with childcare?
That hit me hard the other day. Like I didn't think of that. And then they said, we need formula. And I'm thinking, what happened if that happened to me? Where would we have gotten formula? Now,
if disaster is striking, right? If the hurricane is moving in on your location, you can't go down to the supermarket and pick up formula, right? It's all sold out, along with all the bread and all the water and all the milk. So having something there is better than not. And keep in mind, right, the bug out bag does require maintenance. You can't just fire and forget this thing. So if you do get infant formula and you put it in your bug out bag and disaster strikes 4 years later, that infant formula probably isn't going to be good to give to your child, right? You're going to need to replace it when it expires. So set a reminder, put it on your calendar, check it every 6 months or something.
You gave the worst. You gave a really bad example.
Did I?
Yeah, because you said if your baby 4 years later with infant food.
Oh well, yeah. I guess that's true.
But no. But the point is,
you're on to Dino Nuggets at that point.
Yeah. I mean, the point is, it's in that year, like the first 6 months before a baby can eat like real food. Think about that. There's nothing you can do, especially if you're not breastfeeding or anything else. There's nothing you can do, and that's a problem. The other thing we always forget about, because we're all millennials, cash. Always have money on you.
Yeah. I'm guilty of this. I have no dollars. I think I don't even have like any change on my desk. I've got no actual currency. Everything is all plastic.
And plastic doesn't help. By the way, gold doesn't help either when you hear that the economy is going to tank and we should all have gold. Gold won't help when you need
Bitcoins won't help.
Yeah, I mean, if you have Bitcoins, make sure you know where that wallet is. Like, don't keep it on your hard drive, everything else. And here, this is on, again, the ready.gov site. Have all your family documents. And I'm also guilty of this, but I have a firebox to put this in. But all your passports, I wouldn't keep that in your bug out back, but I would at least have copies of it. And maybe, and I'll ask Tom, I wouldn't necessarily encrypt this. Because to decrypt this or have two copies, have two USBs with an encryption, I don't know.
Yeah, you can, but you also have to prepare for the notion that there's going to be no power and no available electronics for you to decrypt your documents or access your online vault if you're keeping them in an online password manager. It's as much as I hate telling people, hey, store unencrypted documents, right? We're looking at disaster scenarios. Now, this does mean that someone could just grab your bug out bag or look in your bug out bag for your identifying documents if they're robbing your house. And that's true, but it's all about the risk you're managing, right? The risk of not having identification when you could need it versus the risk of it getting stolen if your house gets broken into.
So, I mean, there's you have to think about that. But like I said, I've been guilty of this, and we're going on a trip soon, so I'm going to have to eventually scan all this in. But another good idea to have is have a firebox, like one of those Sentry things. It's not as safe. I love when people say, I want a safe. Safes are bad because then the robber just takes the entire safe. This is literally important documents just in case there's a fire. And it's on the second floor or the third floor.
If you can carry your safe, it's not a good safe because anyone can carry your safe. If you have a safe that literally takes like a few people to move into a different room, that's a good safe, right? A robber is not going to go and look at basically like a closet-sized gun safe or a dresser-sized gun safe and go, yeah, I think I'm going to walk off with this, right? But if you've got a tiny firebox with a stupid little lock on it that can be lockpicked in 3 seconds, yeah, they're gonna walk off with that. So don't put money in your firebox. Put, like, I don't know, your passport or just important papers, stuff like that. If you have a safe you can bolt to the ground, that's where you keep your actual valuable stuff.
Like I said, we have like a firebox for exactly the important documents, and you know what? That's where you put all the important documents. Like, yes, if that gets stolen, that's a big problem. But it's not like money. It's just a lot of headache. And I do keep a little bit of money because you never know when you need $200, $300. Like, remember we talked about how I don't have.
Yeah, something you wouldn't mind. I mean, not wouldn't mind, but something that's not going to like be really painful if somebody walks off with it, right? The thing that's going to be more painful is somebody walking off with your passport. One thing to keep in mind, because this has actually happened to me, your firebox where you keep your important paperwork, make sure that doesn't get damp at all. Make sure it's not in a damp place. The last time I opened it, I had mildewy paperwork, which was not good and took a lot of effort to kind of clean all that up. So,
okay, we have 8 minutes left. But I want to spend the last 8 minutes talking about, like, as a family, what you should do, because I do have young kids. And if you do have young kids, okay, we talked about you getting out of the house, but what happens if you can't you're with your kids, like what to do? And so it's great to have a bug out bag and everything else, but everyone in your family needs to know where it is. That's one. And the other thing is, if you have kids, you need to have a plan on what to do, like where to meet, where to go to. Because you never know, you could be coming in and your house could be on fire and you can't get inside your house, and you need to make sure that everyone's out.
So this is kind of, I grew up in the Midwest and tornadoes were a thing, right? House fires were a thing. And we spent a whole lot of time as a family discussing, because we moved a lot, okay, if the house catches on fire, we meet here. We meet back in the backyard towards this tree on this fence. And everyone knew, in the case of a fire, that's where you go. In the case of a tornado, this is where you go inside the house. Having a plan well communicated and understood and, refreshed all the time, because saying it once, I'm forgetful, right? I would forget that stuff, but having a plan is absolutely necessary. And even think about external stuff, right? Hurricane is moving in and you've got, a kid at school and you've got your wife like at work and you've got a kid in daycare and you're at a different work. Where do you meet then, right? Where's the location that you would all huddle up together to make a plan on where you're going to go next? Having that stuff figured out beforehand is far easier, especially if phone lines are down or cell signal is jammed.
So when my wife cooks, and we all experience this, that you have too much steam and the fire alarm goes off. I make sure that my son knows that we have to get out of the house. So I quickly say, hey, we have to get out of the house. We go to the porch, we disable it. So he knows this is like preschool fire drills. So he hears that, he knows what the sound is, and he knows that he has to get out, because you don't want him to be in the middle of the night hearing a fire and saying, oh, this is not important. So you have to take every fire alarm with a drill. Now, you were saying something about school, which is really important. As an educator, let your kids stay at school. If you hear about something, if this is public school, let the kids stay there, because the last thing you need is, if something's going on, for every single parent to crowd the school to get their kids out. Let the security people, at least in New Jersey, handle everything. It's not what you want to hear, and you want to be with your kids, but let them handle it, because people there are trained.
Yeah, these people are trained. They go through a yearly checklist. They know, okay, they literally, I've seen it. I've been in school offices where they've got run books of, okay, here's, an actual like incident of violence. Here's a tornado. Here's an earthquake. Here's a fire. And it's laid out in steps of what you have to do. And everybody has to review that every so often throughout the year.
So, because we always get something that happens and all the parents want to quickly pick up their kids, and it causes this big to-do. And the problem is that what happens when all these parents descend on the school? What they're going to do is they're going to shut it down. Now, my school's on a big hill and we don't let anybody up. But there was an incident last year where there was a robbery at the local mall, which was less than a mile away, and all the parents are rushing. And we told the parents, don't come. You can't get in. Just let it happen. Well, I have a doctor's appointment. I have this. I understand all of that. You can't leave. Sorry. Like, stay there. And that's probably a good idea. If you're ever stuck, a school's also a really safe place. So if that's the case, you can get into a school, which you probably can't get into, but there are also probably bomb shelters and fire shelters and all these other shelters. If you need to go someplace.
Every school I've ever been to, as a kid, we had all kinds of drills on, okay, a fire is happening, or fire drills happen all the time. Even in college, dragging everyone out of a dorm room at, 10 a.m. on a Saturday, which, by the way, everyone is asleep at 10 a.m. on a Saturday. Dragging everyone out to the front lawn happens all the time, at least once every 2 months. When I was a kid, tornado drills inside of schools were great. We all huddled up in bathrooms and in the center of the building. But it burns it into your head. I do want to say the most important thing, though, especially for a really quick, really active disaster, your bug out bag is not your first priority. Your family is. So things can be replaced. People cannot. If you are in a super critical time crunchy emergency, think house fire. Grabbing the bug out bag should probably be your last priority. Your first priority would be getting your family out of the house into a safe location. That's the thing you need to worry about. The bug out bag is great if you hear, hey, we've got 14 hours to evacuate because of a hurricane. Cool. Grab the bug out bag. You've got 14 hours. If you have 14 seconds or a few minutes, get the people out.
And the pets. I mean, people forget about the pets. And it's hard. I mean, you hear these things that people in Houston were leaving their pets outside and everything else. It was terrible. Yes, if you have a pet, you're responsible for them too. And that's that. I don't have pets, but I did hear that shelters were letting them in and everything else. And again, have your what to do in case of a minor emergency in town, where to go, what to do, and have it if you have a major natural disaster. Like the people in Puerto Rico now that we said are not going to have power for months. Like they have to figure all this out. And I mean, again, where do you evacuate an island to? That's the other thing.
I mean, a natural disaster on that scale, I can't even fathom it because you can't even plan for that, right? If I asked anyone today, if you asked me today, hey, power's gone for 6 months, what do you do? My answer is, I guess leave.
I mean, and then like I said in the beginning, yes, great, your work is not open, but guess what? You're not getting paid. I mean, that's the other thing. So you always want to think about that. And hopefully, and all I hope is that again, not to be political, the federal government has plans for all of these. And I just want to remind people that people in Puerto Rico can't vote for their own aid package because they're not actually they're Americans, but they're like territory and this and that. So we don't want to play politics with all of this. Let's figure out how to help everybody at once, and let's get some real people looking at how to mitigate this in the future.
Yeah. So hit up ready.gov to figure out what to put in your disaster recovery bag. Have cloud backups and batteries, and most importantly, have a plan. And not just one plan, right? Because the plan for a fire is totally different than the plan for a tornado. One involves getting out of the house, one involves going into the very middle of the house. So make sure you talk about this and get something together as a family.
So anyway, with that, we're going to leave. And my schedule for the next week or two is very busy. So this may be our last show for a week or so. So just FYI. But we're here. And join the WhatsApp group. Hit us up. We'll get you in. Anyway, everybody, have a good week.
Have fun, everyone.
Bye.